the next part of our research module, we're going to be talking about America, and that's one of my favourite subjects to talk about. And I had such an incredible time travelling across both the west and the east coasts of the USA, and I learned absolutely masses about homelessness prevention and response, and also affordable and sustainable housing solutions too. So in America, I found that the depravity that I was faced with was on really a level that I'd really not anticipated at all. And the homelessness in America is on another scale compared to of that in the UK. And in the cities that I visited, such as San Francisco and Los Angeles, we could see literally hundreds and thousands of people homeless, just wandering the streets with nowhere to go. And systems are set up quite differently in America. There's no welfare state as such. So if you are homeless in the UK, you can easily access welfare benefits if you can get an address, or you may have a catch-22 of trying to get an address in order to obtain your benefits, but you have got an option of being able to access some form of safety net, or maybe that you know that property, if you can access it, it's going to be reasonably affordable somewhere within the UK. So in places like San Francisco, this is not the case at all. And if you're homeless in somewhere like San Francisco, you basically have no recourse to any public funds or any welfare benefits. So you can find it a real struggle just to get your get some money in day to day to meet your essential living needs. You also would find it very difficult to find housing, because we found places like San Francisco, Silicon Valley is the most expensive place to buy a home in America, and it can cost somewhere around $2 million to purchase an apartment in San Francisco or Silicon Valley. So if you're homeless and rough sleeping or chronically homeless in a place like California, you're going to find it really, really difficult to re-engage and get back onto into mainstream life and re-engage with the community and get back into housing and jobs and be able to actually live a sustainable lifestyle, because unlike the UK, the minimum wage for people in say California isn't enough to buy a $2 million apartment. So where we could see here, we have more aligned property values and prices with our average salaries. So it's really difficult if you're chronically homeless in a place which has suffered from gentrification, which is the process of reviving neighbourhoods which were previously run down and having an influx of quite well-to-do residents and quite wealthy residents moving in and bringing an area upwards and transforming an area. If you're living within that area already and you're struggling with affordable housing issues, then it's going to be 10 times worse once gentrification has taken over. And that's what we've seen in places like Brooklyn in New York, where people are really struggling to afford housing there. Local people, people who have local businesses or who have families. So it's a really precarious situation in America, and I was really not prepared for the level of destruction which I was witnessing. And I started out my journey on the West Coast in California, and I saw Silicon Valley and LA and San Francisco, as I've already mentioned, and I was able to see how the West Coast respond to homelessness. And then I went over to the East Coast and spent time in New York to have a look at how response differed there. And some of the contrast you'll see in New York, they rely heavily on shelters and temporary bed placements for people and for families. And they have a huge proportion of homeless people who are actually in temporary accommodation. But that also comes with a huge bill attached to it as well. So it's proving an ineffective way of addressing homelessness in New York. Whilst it's keeping people off the streets and out of the cold, it's not getting people into housing and out of the temporary accommodation lifestyle and system that they so desperately need to move on from. So that was some good learning from the East Coast. From the West Coast, though, they don't have the same level of shelter space available. But what they do, what they do have is a much more visible homeless population within the streets. And you see so many homeless people in California, and it's really, really unsettling. And it's almost normalized there, which is something I think we need to really halt homelessness in its tracks in the UK before we find that homelessness is becoming normalized here too. At the moment, I still think that we're, as a nation, are very, very keen on solving homelessness, and we're very behind homeless people, and we want to give them solutions, and we have empathy with them. In America, I saw a lot less of that, unfortunately, and it was really, really difficult. There's a lot of the homeless are very detached from mainstream society and life. So I'm going to talk about my findings in America in a couple of different brackets. So instead of talking about each individual location that I visited and each individual organisation that I engaged with, I'm going to talk about my findings bracketed together in categories in fields. So the first one I'm going to talk about is engagement, which is really, really important because it enables us to reach out and really connect with the homeless and understand their needs better. So stay with us for the next part, which is engagement.